but let's talk about closing the potential gap. I think that if I could see you and I had a room full of people and I said, hey, are you kind of okay with where you are? People would be like, yeah, I'm kind of okay with where I am. But if I were to actually ask people and say, hey, do you think that you're at less than your potential right now? Just as many, if not more hands would raise up and say, yeah, I'm probably short of it. And mainly that's because most of us, when we think about it, we think about our flaws, we think about the negative things. It's just the natural way that our head goes. But a lot of us would agree with that. But when you really think about it, we're the only species that's actually allowed, or we're one of the only species that's actually allowed to do less than what we're capable of, right? A tree doesn't grow and then stop and say, I don't feel like going any further. It always goes to its highest capability. Animals mate at a level that, whatever, right? Like they go until they get, like everything goes to the level that they are capable of. And then there's us. I used this quote last year, and it's funny because someone a couple weeks ago asked me what my favorite quote was. They asked me in Instagram stories, and it changes constantly. But I used a quote last year that I think kind of speaks to this. And it was a Billy Graham quote, and Billy Graham said, God loves you just the way you are, but too much to allow you to stay there, right? That really speaks to potential, meaning that there's more for most of us, right? I thought about this, I've been thinking really about this topic for years. I was asked a couple years ago, someone said, what's your greatest fear? I was doing a keynote at an event, and they said, what's your greatest fear? And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm not a very fearful person, I'm not sure. And I came up with, and I said, you know what my greatest fear is? I said, my greatest fear is leaving this earth to a standing ovation to all of you, and then getting before God and having him say, what the hell? That speaks to potential. It's the idea that I don't need to compare myself against this person or that person or that person. We all have a completely different level of potential. And for some of us, everyone else thinks we're doing amazing because they're comparing us against their level of potential. But the truth of the matter is you were supposed to do so much more. That's my greatest fear. And for others of us, we don't need to be at that level in that specific area, and we compare ourselves against them going, how do they do that? How is that possible? And then we think that we're somehow lazy or not good. And the truth is, we were never supposed to perform at that level like them. And so that whole comparison thing, it's a losing game. But at the end of the day, it's about how we perform against our individual potential. I'm telling you that we live in a world right now that has a very strong law of average. The law of average tries to pull against you at all times. It's trying to keep you back and make you average. The pull is absolutely everywhere that you look. The pull runs rampant in our society. The pull of, well, at least I'm not as bad as well, at least I'm not, so-and-so, has completely taken over our society. The pull to just be average, just enough. In an effort to not be criticized, to be accepted, we have to find the sweet spot between being lazy and then don't do too much because someone else will feel like a failure. So we've got to find that area that's just about right. It's what I call that law of average. So we balance between underachievement and overachievement to try to find the comfortable place that pleases us and doesn't potentially offend anyone or show anyone else up. But I'm telling you, from me to you, if I'm a voice in your life, if you care enough to pay and watch this conference, and no matter where you're watching around the world, we have to fight against that law of average. We were created with specific purposes, each and every single one of us. And the law of average pulls against that because it says, no, you're all the same. You're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be. And believe me, guys, I completely get it. It's difficult. We're surrounded by a world that's promoting mediocrity, that mediocrity is a good thing. But I'm here to tell you it is not in the areas where you are not supposed to be mediocre, especially if you're in real estate. Like, did any of you get into real estate because you're like, oh, I'm going to be so average. I'm such an average person, I'm going to get into real estate. Did any of you get into real estate so that you could be average? I highly doubt that is the case with any of you. You bet on yourself the fact that you are in real estate means that you think you're not average because you're betting on yourself every day. And you look at the world, you look at the landscape, and you're like, hey, put me in there, I'm going to win. Put me in, I'm going to just go out there, commission only, going to make it happen. I can do that. You're betting on yourself because you're saying, I'm not average. Look, average is fine if you're working for the government. Look, go work at DMV, average is fine. You're going to keep a job. You're going to, go work at TSA. You could be average. You could be below average. You could do just fine. But not in this line of work. You got to be different. And you don't get into real estate because you're not different. I put out a thing on Instagram earlier in the year, and I said, be careful when you follow the masses, because sometimes the M is silent. I'm going to say that again for some of you whose head does not work as quickly. Be careful when you follow the masses. Sometimes the M is silent. We weren't here to follow the masses. We weren't here to be normal. We weren't put on this earth to avoid criticism. You know, we all love the quotes. We all like them and everything on Instagram and other places. You know, when someone talks behind your back, they're just proving that you're 2 steps ahead of them. We all love those quotes, right? But we live in a time right now where we have to decide whether we are people who simply like to read Instagram quotes, or if we are people who actually live those quotes that we're putting out to everybody else. What was the point of those quotes if it wasn't for times when you actually had to do it, when you actually had to, right? At some point, you have to decide if you're going to use your adult life to live out the dreams that you always wanted to accomplish to do, or you're not. You have to decide if the childhood version of yourself would be happy with how you are using your free will today. And we still have that, free will. Would that person be happy with how you're using that free will today? That's a difficult question to ask, sometimes an even more difficult question to answer. And then at some point, you have to leave the dream state. You've heard me say many times, and again, another thing I put up recently is that, you know, Disney lied to you. Dreams don't come true. Dreams are for sleeping people. Like, everyone I've ever known that's dreaming is sleeping, right? So it all sounds great, but dreamers aren't the ones that actually get anything done. At some point, you've got to leave the dream state. You've got to go to the planning state, to the execution state, to the states where things actually matter. And it's interesting because in my country here, we find ourselves in the middle of a political season where it becomes more normal to talk about the negatives of your opponent than it does the positives of yourself, regardless of who you're for. It's no longer about what a candidate will do for you or what a candidate will do for the country. It's about what the other one won't do and what the other one wants to do and why they're bad. And that's a minor switch, but that has huge implications. Can you imagine if you went to a listing presentation and you spent the whole time doing nothing but saying how bad the other agents were? Can you imagine if you went to anything? Can you imagine if we did a consult and all we did was bash the other coaching companies? We never told them anything we do well. We're just like, well, you know, I heard a rumor that they've got this going on, and I heard Is that the kind of consult you want? Is that the kind of person that we ultimately want to become? Of course not. And what this leads to is that too many of us, without even recognizing it, we are racing to be better than the bad alternative. And if you do that, the problem with that is you'll never actually reach potential. You'll just be better than the bad alternative. It's a different way of thinking, guys. It's a higher level of thinking. It's the way that all of us need to be thinking. So I'm going to talk about 7 different things we can do to close the potential gap. And you say, why 7? Because it's always 7, isn't it? Isn't it always 7 ways to do this? 7 things you need to do for whatever. I tried to make it 6 or 8. It just came out at 7, guys. Even I hate myself for it, so I apologize, but it just is what it is, all right? So let's talk about them. You could take notes. Again, we're going to have slides for you. But more important than any of that, actually do what I'm talking about. The first step is very simple, guys. Make a decision. We have to make decisions all the time. We have to make decisions on what is acceptable. Everything we do comes from a decision. Who you marry, what you allow in your life, what you do daily, who you're friends with, how you raise your kids. Everything comes from a decision. Do you know that not making a decision is a decision? Do you know that? Like, when something happens and you stop and you don't make a decision, you made a decision to not make a decision. Decisions are powerful. My son at one point watched Pawn Stars. It's P-A-W-N, for any of you that didn't hear me clearly. Pawn Stars. And he's watching it, he's going, Dad, you're telling me they buy it cheap and then they resell it for more and this is what they're doing? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, Dad, we gotta start a pawn store. Like, we gotta do something here. We gotta set up a site. We've gotta do whatever. And he said, can we do it? And I was like, I don't know, buddy. Let me think about it. We never ended up doing it. I made a decision. I made a decision to not make a decision, which was really no. And so we have got to start looking at it and saying, hey, once you hear something, once you know something, you're accountable to that thing. Decisions are powerful. Yes, no, maybe, don't make. It's all decisions. And I'm going to tell you guys, and I'll talk a little bit more as we go through this, the moment you make the decision that I don't have to control everything, but I want to grow, is the moment your life changes. I am talking to an internet full of control freaks. I am well aware. I know who you are. I work with you guys all the time. You know who you are. You don't have to feel offended because you're not sitting right in front of me. I didn't look at any one of you, but you know I'm talking to you. I'm talking to an internet full of control freaks who need to understand that the moment you decide you want to grow and you don't have to control every step of it is ultimately the moment that your life changes. We'll talk more about this later. The second thing that we have to do is we have to audit our inner circle. Now, this is a powerful one, guys. You've heard for years, and I've heard for years, that you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around, right? Digitally, like out there in the universe, like if you've heard that before, raise your hand. Yes, you have, right? I've heard it before. I don't know if it's true, but it's probably true, right? Aren't you like kind of the people that you hang out with, right? If you hang out with convicts, eventually you go to jail, right? Isn't that why people talk about trying to get out of certain areas? If you hang out with pompous freaks over here, you probably are going to become that thing. We don't take enough time actually looking at who is in our inner circle. Let me give you a little bit of advice. Entry into your inner circle should take a lot more than just blood relation or time they've hung out with you. You're like, hang around me so you'll see how serious I am about my inner circle. How serious I am about who I allow in. How serious I am about who I allow to contribute to my life. Inner circle is one of the most powerful things in your life, and it's one of the things that all of us are ignoring because I grew up with them. That's my uncle. That's my mom. That's my brother. Toxic. Killing every aspiration you have, and you don't even realize that it's happening. You need people that push you, that challenge you, that don't accept mediocre thinking. If you get around me and you say something about something growth-wise or something whatever, and it's some mediocre or defeating or whatever, I promise you I'm going to call you on it. I promise you. You may not like me afterwards, but those are the types of people you need there because it comes from a place of love. That's why they're even allowed to say that to you. Your inner circle should be able to speak truth to you without you hating them because you know where it comes from. So some of us have to look at our inner circle and start to say, hey, maybe it's not just what I'm doing every day. Maybe it's not just what I'm spending on this. Maybe it's not just the office I work for. Maybe it's not just who is in your inner circle. It's poison. You could do everything else right, but you've tied bricks to your feet. You're not going anywhere. Inner circle. Third thing, get out of your way. I wrote a book on this, guys. I almost wish I could rewrite it now because I've thought of so much more. I look back on that and I'm like, what did you even know? Like, how did you write that book? Like, it makes no sense, right? I look and I'm like, I should have wrote this, should have said this, should have whatever. But the truth, the title, what it was about is so true to this day. We blame everybody else for everything going on, and yet you're the common denominator in every single situation. Successful people, unsuccessful people, mediocre people, common denominator in every single case. It's us, right? Part of getting out of your way is getting out of your head. Some of you need to hear that. Get out of your head. When you live in your head, you create problems that don't even exist. True or not true? There's an old meme that I saw. I loved it. It said it was a person showering, not like it wasn't like graphic. It was just like a cartoonish type of thing. And it said like showering, 3% bathing, 97% winning fake arguments. And how true is that for so many of us, right? We got to stop caring so much about what other people think who don't have that place in our life. I'm not saying don't care what others think. You should care what others think. That's how you get correction. That's how you get direction. That's how you get mentorship. That's why you all got dressed today. because it wouldn't make sense for you to walk into your office naked because you cared that everybody's going to think you're a freak. So it's good on some level to think, care about what people think, but it's about the right people caring about what you think. One of my favorite lines says, nobody can drive you crazy unless you give them the keys. We are giving the keys to people that don't deserve the keys. They don't deserve to have that authority. They don't deserve to have those words over our lives. We focus so much on the external. But I'm telling you, it's a victim mentality. If what you are capable of, if what you are going to do, if what you're going to be able to achieve is controlled by who the president is, what that person in your office did, then you might as well get in a coffin and wait. Just find a coffin, open it up, lay down and wait, because you obviously have absolutely no control over your life. And it's funny but that's how we're living. That's what we're doing. Those are the actions that we're ultimately taking. For a lot of us, it's not the huge, hills and mountains, whatever. It's literally like the pebble in our sock. We're pointing at all the things on the external, and the truth of the matter is we're stumbling ourselves. We've got a pebble in our own sock that's holding us back from doing whatever it is that we want to do, but we're blaming all of the barriers around us when the truth of the matter is they have nothing to do with any of it. They're the same barriers that someone more successful than you is standing right next to and going right through it. Part of understanding who should have value and who should have a voice in our world and who should have is that we've got to stop allowing others to determine what is the right way to operate. We get these ideas. It's one of the things I have against like the self-help book world. It stinks because I've written self-help books, but I can't stand self-help books if I'm just being very honest. Like, how many can say the exact same thing? Okay, control the things you can control. Got it. Let's find 50 different ways to say it. Like, let's do. But like, we come up with these rules of like what successful people do, and then we're like, well, that's it. That's what I have to do. It's just not true. Well, successful people get up early. I get up early, but it's just because I can't sleep. I'm like, it's just like I want to get up and go, like whatever, that's fine. But the thing is, I get up early when no one else is awake, and so I get more done. Well, you can stay up late and do that. Like, stop allowing other people to determine what it is that makes you successful. Like, for some of you, it might be get up early. For some of you, it might be just staying up super late, and that happens to be when that's your jam time, and that's when you, like, whatever. But, like, some of us lose before we begin because we're following these rules that have nothing to do with us. Well, that's how so-and-so is successful. That's how, do you know how many people I know who do this for a living, and they give you advice based on what they think they're supposed to say, not what they actually do on a daily basis? Like, a lot. One of our speakers this weekend, I forget who it was, said, well, I used to tell people, Eric Simon from The Broke Agent said, when I said, so how do you come up with your content, and how are you like whatever? And he goes, well, I used to tell people I had this big extravagant thing, and I would spend all this time. And he goes, I'm just going to be honest with you. Occasionally I write things in my notes, and then I steal other people's stuff and throw open house on the end. I was like, that's honest. That's working right now. Like, that's absolutely... Stop caring so much about everyone else. And look, we're an industry. God, were we an industry filled with PC warriors. Just filled with them. You guys know these people. They're in all the Facebook groups. They're on all the social channels, just ready to call out every injustice and every person who said something they don't like and how terrible they are. I saw when this whole pandemic started happening, agents started going, all right, I'm going to get masks and we'll put our logo on them. And so these are going to be a permanent thing now. And one way we'll brand is we'll start giving these out to clients. And I was like, cool, sounds like a good idea. Let's see how that goes. And it didn't take long. PC warriors jumped in. How disgusting. You would put your logo on a mask. How disgusting. They jumped in. I mean, do these people ever sell a house? It's like they just sit in the groups and wait for the next thing to happen. You know what I thought when I saw that? I was inspired. I said, I'm going to go buy muzzles, put my logo on it, and I'm going to send it to them. That's what I'm going to do. And don't think that I didn't actually think about doing that. I did. I pictured it. I thought of it, but I couldn't do it because it wouldn't end well in this industry. I'm not allowed to do that kind of stuff, but I did think about it, and some of you would have liked it. Part of getting out of your way is letting go of your excuses. God, do we have excuses? Oh, I'd exercise if I had more time. I hurt my knee when I was 17. You're 43. Oh, I had a bad back when I was 22. You're 54. What are you talking about? Like, we have all of these, if I just had Look, I have never had anyone tell me, you know, I'd turn in this winning lottery ticket if I just had more time. Oh, if I just had more time, I'd turn in this winning lottery ticket. Nobody has an excuse of time when they have a winning lottery ticket. It's only in regards to things they don't want to do. So let's eliminate those excuses. I can't do what the other agent does because I'm a single mom. Excuses, guys, are just protective guards we create to protect ourselves from the truth and keep us from feeling bad about ourselves. Because at least I'm not as bad. No, that's not. That's all it is. Your job is to create solutions. If you're making excuses, you don't even know what the problems are. So how do you create a solution for something that you have an excuse for, therefore it's not a problem? That's a problem. Recognize problems. Stop making excuses. And either say, you know what, I sucked at that, I failed. That was no good. My bad. But don't make it, when you make an excuse, you set up a protective guard that makes you believe that there's not even a problem, which means you can never come up with a solution. And I'm gonna tell you right now, very successful people, they are solution, 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 solution. I said it at the beginning of this conference, you're a full-time firefighter. You can't put out a fire if you convince yourself it doesn't exist. There's no fire. The fire's right there. No fire. Nope. No fire. That's a fire. You can't come up with a solution if you don't believe there's a problem. No excuses. Own it. Stop making them, and let's move forward. That's what very successful people do. Very successful people know their benchmarks. You know, the reason I wanted to talk to Darren Dawson is, man, we didn't get into that part, but that man knows his benchmarks. He knows his exact cost per lead. He knows exactly what it costs to bring them through. He knows exactly what his cost is after sale. He knows, like, it's ridiculous. If you ever got a chance to sit down, have a beer with him and just like talk about that stuff, he knows that stuff in and out. How many of you, when he said, how much does your average cost of acquisition cost? How many of you sat there and went, it's about tells me you don't know, right? We don't know. Benchmarks. We're actually going to do a business planning training with you guys on October 21st. So mark it down, Wednesday, October 21st. I'm gonna do it at noon and 9 p.m. Eastern. It's free. You can register at jaredjamestoday.com/business plan. Let's learn our our benchmarks. Get your colleagues in there. Get the people you know. We need to understand our business so we know what it's gonna take to go to the next level. The next thing we wanna do as part of getting out of our way, you got to lose every day. I said this in the opening. You got to lose every day. You got to be realistic, yes, but you got to lose every day. If you're only going for victories, then you don't understand the life of an entrepreneur. The life of an entrepreneur is not one where they're constantly winning. It's losses every day. If I'm constantly winning every day, I'm not shooting high enough for testing my abilities, period. I had a guy walk up to me at a conference once and he goes, Jared, I just want to let you know, I have a 98% closing ratio at my listing presentations. 98% of the people use me when I go to, and he goes, what do you think of that? I said, what do I think of that? That sucks. And he goes, well, what do you mean? It's 98%. I said, you're obviously only meeting with people you know, because nobody has a 98% closing ratio unless all they're doing is meeting with friends and family. Your business is not growing when it's not outside of that. It's constantly a competition against ourselves. That's what you've got to remember. Like, when you go out, like when I go do a 5K or I'm going for a run or whatever, I'm not competing against the high school kid who starts sprinting and never stops. That's just not going to happen. That kid is superhuman. I mean, he was me 20 years ago, but not anymore. Like, just, you've seen these kids. They finish and it's like they're it was 14:47. Oh, okay, well, I slowed down. Well, I ate a little too much last night, you know, whatever. Like, you're never gonna compete with that one. It's ultimately a race against yourself. See, entrepreneurship, being in the real estate business, is much more MMA than it is boxing. That's the truth. Like, there's no Floyd Mayweather of entrepreneur, like, doesn't happen, right? It's more, hey, the champ is 22-12. Right? That's a successful entrepreneur. That's the way we have to be looking at our days. That's the way we have to be looking, because if we're not losing all the time, I'm telling you right now, we are not reaching high enough. We've got to make a decision to go from the learn stage to the screw up stage. Learn is awesome. You're here right now, you're learning. Awesome. Learn a lot. Take it in. But most of you stay in that spot. And you just kind of, just keep learning. Now I'm going to go to the next conference. I learned so much. Same place, but I'm going to go learn some more. Look at all my notes. Look at all my notes. You know the way you learn? Leave the learn stage, which is awesome. You're learning right now. That's fantastic and good on you. But it means nothing if you don't leave and go to the screw-up stage, okay? Screw-up stage is what we experienced when we built our CRM, right? Do I got any of my CS people in here, right? Yeah. You guys remember those 3 to 6 months? Woo, okay? That was, okay, invest millions, build a software, and let's see how it performs once we throw all those people onto the server and everything. It's like a game of Jenga. Everything just breaks every time you move something else. That was screw-up stage, right? I thank God we're not in that stage anymore. You know, now we have a great product for people and we've added, but man, those were some tough times. But I don't have what I have now if we didn't go through the screw-up stage, right? iPhone is not iPhone. Do you remember how many of you remember when the iPhone released on the market? Oh, we love our iPhone now, but boy, when that thing was, screw up. We were the guinea pigs. But it's the only way that people get to a certain level is if they're willing to leave this safe place where there's no accountability, where there's no results. Learn, and go, all right, I'm gonna screw up now. Let's go test it. Let's go jump into the deep end. Time for that to happen. That is the only place that growth actually comes from. After you do that, you've got to force accountability on yourself. Yes, I run a coaching company because I believe in it. How many people do I have to bring on this stage who tell you I was here and now I'm here? I'm making more money. I have time with my family. I can't believe I waited so long to do this. While you're sitting back going, I can't afford $500 bucks a month, $500 a month. How many times are you going out to eat? You can't afford to put someone in place who helps you create a plan and drastically changes your world because you got to get cream spinach every Saturday? Like, come on, guys. It's just the priorities of what we're doing here. If you're watching this, I want you on this stage in the future. But I can't do that by you just wanting to change. I can only do that by you stepping out of learn and going to screw up and saying, show me the way, let's do it. This is gonna suck, but I'm gonna have to go through that a little bit, right? Everybody wants accountability until they actually need it. You ever been with someone who is on like some kind of weight loss program and they're like, hold me accountable. Hold me accountable. Yeah, just check on me. And so you check on them on day 3 and you're like, how you doing? And they're like, I'm fantastic, thank you. You know, it's been really hard, but I'm fantastic. And you check on them on day 5, you're like, how you doing? It's like really rough, but I'm good. You check on them on day 7 and they're like, it's all right, it's going all right. You check on them on day 9 and they're like, well, what's it your business? Who asked you? Well, you know exactly how that is now going, right? So we want to help you. We want to get you into that accountability stage. We do four phases, guys, when we put someone into coaching, right? We do 4 phases. Phase 1 is we set the foundation. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they decide to make a change, and then they have this sudden urge of motivation. They're gonna do everything. They're gonna make a to-do list, and they're gonna go do it. Can't do that, guys. You got to define your theme for the next 12 months. You got to define what your biggest goal is. You got to define what activities you need to complete your goal. You got to define what skills you need you don't currently have. You got to define where your focus is going to be. And then you're going to go on to phase 2, which is elimination, one of the most powerful stages that we focus on with you. What activities are a huge time waster? Let's eliminate that. Let's eliminate bad habits. Let's eliminate finances, expenses that are unnecessary. You heard person after person get on this stage with me and say, I did a budget and it was embarrassing. Meredith talked about it. It was embarrassing. We just started eliminating stuff. We saved more money than I was spending on coaching because we actually started looking at where is my money going towards. I was spending money on things that were good. They just weren't right for me at the right time. We're going to design your ideal day. We're going to learn your best uses of time. Phase 3, we're going to go into optimization. Half of our lives are spent on mundane things like eating and sleeping and driving and grocery shopping and preparing food and cleaning and all of these things. And we just accept it as like, hey, that's just how it is. That's the way it is. And it's not true, guys. We can regain hours every single week. We can increase quality of life, but we have to focus on it to see what is it that we need to do that's going to do that before we go to the 4th stage, which is execution. Now we have a plan in place. And it's like, let's go. Tires are on. Wheels are changed. Oil has been changed. It's time. Execution. That's when we finally get to that stage that can be a little bit frustrating because it's tough and it goes against what I've always done and it's not the way I learned to do things and this goes... But then you start to see that change. How many people did you see get up here and they were like, man, I got to admit, in the beginning, I didn't love my coach. I didn't love this. I didn't whatever. But that's how they got up here because they were willing to go through those stages. They knew that they were worth it. They knew that their family deserved it. They knew that they knew that it all deserved it. The fourth thing that we have to do, it's one of my favorite ones, guys. We've got to expand our offerings. Please pay close attention to this one. We need to expand our offerings. You're always told in business that you got to focus, focus, focus. There's riches in the niches. And that's very true. You focus within the real estate market. Sometimes it's good to focus on the luxury market. That is a niche. It doesn't mean it's the only thing you can ever do. I did these happy hour with Jared James things where I did it on Facebook, I put it on YouTube, I put it on our podcast, and we basically did happy hours with the CEOs of almost every major brand in our area. So I had on the CEO of RE/MAX, I had on the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, I had on the CEO of Century 21, I had on the CEO of Howard Hanna, I had the CEO of Real Estate One, I had the CEO of, almost every single major real estate brand. And one of the things that I loved, I was talking to some of these places and you started talking about their profit levels and what they do, and we just got really into it. Almost all of them had other offerings. Oh yeah, we make money from the sales, but we really make money from mortgage, we make money from title, we make money from, and I was like, oh, there's a pattern happening here, right? The idea is that we build a team and then we expand. It's not just you working on one thing. I want you to pay attention to something. And this is in your slides so you can see this. Some of the biggest brands you think of, the thing that you think they do, it's only a percentage of their revenue. It's not all of it, okay? Because they expanded their offerings, right? So Tesla, only 85% of their revenue is car sales. Now that's on the higher end for some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. Tesla, 85%. Stripe, you guys know Stripe, the transaction coordination, right? Only 52% of their revenue comes from transactions. Google that. It's a verb. Google that. Only 58% comes from their search. Apple, only 60% comes from their iPhones. McDonald's, only 55% comes from their franchise sales. And Amazon, the stores, do you know only 62% of their revenue comes from online shopping? They literally host the servers that their store is built on. Like, think of all the things they're involved in. And you're like, well, Amazon.com. That's a portion of what they do. They expanded their offerings. Look at what I'm doing, guys. You knew me at first as a coach, right? Still am a coach. Got coaching. Not only just have coaching, have gold coaching, platinum coaching, have team leader coaching. Right there's a bunch of different offerings. We do training. The second thing we do virtual training for individuals on a monthly basis to be like the gateway drug that gets them into one-on-one. We do virtual training ongoing with brokerages and team-wide training. We have revenue coming in from Blueprint course sales, Blueprint for real estate success. We've got speaking revenue coming in, even in these times, for live events, for virtual events. We've got marketing, a marketing department through Jarja Media. We've got individual reps that work with people and handle their marketing. We've got people that handle Facebook and Instagram and PPC, pay-per-click, retargeting of your stuff, social. We've got digital business cards that bring in revenue where we set up the digital business card for you. We've got a whole transaction coordination department. You notice there's a lot of different ways to create revenue here? Transaction department. We've got a CRM. What? Where did that come from? CRM for individuals, CRMs for teams. How many times have I said to you, don't just listen to what I'm saying, like watch what I'm doing. CRM for individuals, teams, brokerages. We're going to be releasing websites for all of them. I've got investments that make me money. I've got affiliate deals with companies that bring in revenue. We've made money and gotten products off of influencer stuff on Instagram. We've gotten vendor sponsorships. We've been offered money for people to advertise on our podcast. Like, guys, watch what you should be doing the same thing. We had an article come out a few weeks ago on NBC News. We had one come out on Fox News. We had one come out on Yahoo Finance on me talking about breaking the mold. And they're like, this is what a coach usually does. And yet this guy went in and started changing things up. And now he's doing this and doing all these other things and whatever. Guys, expand your offerings. We talk all the time about being entrepreneurs, and that's what I think a lot of you love about, being in our program and watching me and focusing with us, is that I'm so big on that. But I think one of the ways that we help you guys as entrepreneurs is not just through our coaching, through helping you set up, infrastructure and consistency, but at some point we have to start having the conversation and looking beyond just real estate sales and figure out what else you can do to maximize your abilities and close the gap between where you are and where your potential lies. You've got to start asking yourself, where else can I expand? And then be open to it. Once you have something systematized, it's ready to go, where else can I do that? I'm not talking about spreading too thin. At minimum, all of you watching should have investments. All of you. At minimum, how do you not have ad revenue on your website? Selling ads to all the different places that you refer on a regular basis. Like right there's a couple other sources. You got to sit down and get real about this and say, what revenue am I missing right now if I want to expand my offerings? Number 5. This is one of my favorite ones, guys. Please pay attention here. I think I've said that 3 times already. The 5th thing we've got to look at is we've got to look at how do we create more capacity. One of the ways that you eliminate the gap, the potential gap between where you are and what your potential is you create more capacity. You can't handle more by learning to juggle more, okay? That's being focused on the wrong side of the equation. Remember I had Darren Dawson up here and I said, hey guys, we're focused on the wrong side of the funnel. We're going lead, lead, lead. How do we close them? How do we close them? How do we close them? And the real winners are over here going, already closed. How do we multiply them? Now we go to this and we go, all right, if I want to be more successful, I've got to work harder. I've got a wrong side of the equation. It's about capacity. Capacity is, there's an old saying, and it's such a cliche, but it just drives home the point. There's an old saying that the further you pull back an arrow, the further it will fly, okay? Because it's not just about what happens with that arrow once it's in the air. It's about the capacity of distance that you create with the arrow before it ever leaves the bow. It's about how far can you pull that thing back before it ever goes to where everybody else can see it. And all of us would focus on what we saw. And the smart people would focus on the capacity being created before it ever released. The same is true for you and me. It's not about how much more we can fit into our schedules. It's about getting more done by increasing our capacity to do more. When you guys look at what I do with #DidYouSweatToday and all of that kind of stuff, and you think, oh, he's just out there trying. When you see what I'm doing with this, when you see that I'm practicing my morning routines, when you see that I'm trying to eat well on a regular basis, when you see that I'm trying to foster my relationships that actually matter to me, my inner core, my office will tell you I'm rushing out to go take this kid to a game, to take this kid over to swimming, to go, oh guys, hey, I just got in because I was driving my kid to school. I just got back from a run. When you see me doing that with relationships, when you see me making an effort to fill my spiritual cup, when you see all of these things, most of us are focused on the wrong side. What you don't understand is that I'm trying to create more capacity. That's it. I'm creating capacity on the right side to be able to do more. While everyone else is focused over here, I'm focused over here. That's a huge difference between mega successful people and people who just kind of exist. And they look the same and they sound the same and they joke the same. But under the water, that duck doesn't look like he's doing much. He's just turning, but there's a lot of work going on under the water. It's the same exact thing. To create more capacity, you've got to delegate. Your dream doesn't happen without a team. Sinatra did it his way, but he didn't do it by himself. You know, everybody say, I did it my way. That's great, he didn't do it by himself. Nobody does it by themselves. Well, I feel like I'm doing as much as I can. I don't have any more hours in a day. How could I get more done? I talked about this last year, guys, the lie that we all have 24 hours in a day. It's not true. We don't all have the same 24 hours in a day. We have the number of hours that we create according to the infrastructure that we enforce. If one person is a solo machine and they have 24 hours and another person has 50 employees and they have 1,200 hours, okay? We don't all have the same 24 hours. You have the number of hours that you create according to the type of infrastructure that you put in place. 22 out of 28 million small businesses in this world have exactly 0 employees. What kind of sense does that make? It makes no sense at all. That's not a business. That's a hobby. For a lot of you, that's a hobby. Number 6. This one sounds a little cornball, but it's just so true. To close the potential gap, you have to believe that you actually deserve it. Now, look, guys, I'll be very honest with you. This is not one that I struggle with. But I know it's true because I talk to a lot of people that this is what they struggle with. I was talking to one of my good friends recently, and he was going through a really tough time, and he was struggling with some stuff, and I won't get into the specifics of it, but he was, in many ways, every time something good was going to happen or he was going to come out of a certain situation, he would sabotage it. And he didn't even realize he did it. He never even realized that it done. And then he started looking back. He actually went to a counseling session, and he started looking back, and he realized that because of all the things that had happened in his life, and because of all the people he had come across, and because of all the things that had been spoken over him, and because of all the whatever, he subconsciously would sabotage it because he didn't believe that he actually deserved to move out of that place. And so for some of you, that's a very big deal. For some of you, you go past it, you're like, no, I get it, it's all good. But that's not everybody. You could hear everything else that I hear, that I say. And for some of you, if you don't get that point, I deserve to move past it. I deserve to be bigger than what that was. You'll never move forward. Psychological, guys, it's up here. And number 7, we got to commit to the 1%, 99% rule. I've been talking about this all over the world lately, virtually. I'm writing a book where I'm going to write about this, but we need to commit to the 1%, 99% rule. The 1%, 99% rule is this. Most of the things that you're known for in this world or that you want to be known for in this world are less than 1% of what you actually do, okay? It's the 99% of what you do that makes you worthy of it. When I go to an event and I'm walking down the hall and whatever, I hear people, hey, that's Jared James. That's Jared James, the speaker. That's Jared James. I hear it. And they say speaker, trainer, they say all these things. Guys, I spend less than 1% of my life on a stage, and they say Jared James, the speaker. I spend more of my life as a dad, and none of them say, there's Jared James, the dad. 1%. But what makes me worthy of that 1% is the 99% rest of my life that none of you ever see. That's not Instagram worthy, it's not sexy, it's not anything, it's just the work. It's me behind the scenes working on stuff for the company, working on something HR, working on some kind of systems, working on content, working on that nobody ever sees, but it's what makes me worthy of that 1%. You want to be a top producer in your area? It's less than 1% of what you'll actually be. You will spend less than 1% of your time at a closing table. Less than 1. And yet you're a top producer. What makes you worthy of that 1% is the 99% commitment to working on your systems and processes, working with your coach, working to get better, working with your team, working the stuff that nobody will ever see. 1%, 99% rule is one of the things that will get you to close that gap because everybody else does what is seen, what matters, and you'll be over here in the dark going, you don't see it. But this is what makes me worthy of it. This is what makes me worthy of that 1% title. And I'm going to tell you guys a very harsh truth right now. If you're watching me right now and you've watched these full 2 days, if you aren't willing to get consistent with your health, exercise, be accountable to someone for your business, make the calls and contacts that you need to on a regular basis, then do me a favor, look at your computer, look at your phone as you're watching this, and just say, I choose to live below my potential. That's a harsh truth. But that is the decision that we make when we don't think like this, when we don't make it that real. That's what we're doing, whether you recognize it or not. And guys, let me tell you something. I wish, God do I wish, that my calling was to get in front of you and just make you feel fantastic and be like, dream big and then dream bigger. You're somebody. I don't care what anyone says. Gosh darn it. Okay? I wish that that was my calling. It's just not the way God made me. It's just not. In real life, I'm a super nice guy, but Honestly, I mourn for those of you that choose to live below your potential with the only life you're ever gonna get. Ever. Think about it. Don't you ever wonder like what you're capable of? Like, don't you ever kind of like, I could do this better, or I could do like, doesn't that ever creep up? You can come to a conference like this, you can take great notes, you can look at them and get no benefit, see no difference if you're not willing to put yourself in positions in your life that make yourself uncomfortable as a result of being here, that force you to change the way that you're doing things. There's an old saying that every soldier needs a war. Now, I'm not advocating war. I'm saying if you go talk to some Marines and they've been practicing for 3 years, they're like, send me somewhere. Like, I need to go do. And what I'm telling you is that there is a war right now between your comfort zone and what needs to be the new normal for you, which is your daily routine, the accountability that you install, all of those. There's 3 types of agents and people that I've come across. One, they don't believe they're anything or will ever be anything, and their actions are aligned with that belief. The second type is they believe they can do great things, but their actions aren't aligned with that belief. And the third one is they believe they can do great things, and their actions are aligned with that belief. You need to ask yourself, not which one you are now, but which one will you be going forward? The only thing that creates that third person is a little thing called accountability. Wanting something doesn't matter. Accountability, we all want it. We want the result, we don't want the process. The biggest difference between you right now and the you that you ultimately want to be as a result of watching what you're watching is simply your level of execution. Not for the next 2 weeks, not for the next 2 months, but for the next year. There was I saw a thing, you all know Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs died a billionaire with a fortune of $7 billion at the age of 56 from pancreatic cancer. And here are some of his final words, okay? Here's his final words. He said, in other eyes, my life is the essence of success. But aside from work, I have little joy. And in the end, wealth is just a fact of life to which I am accustomed. At this moment, lying in this bed, sick and remembering all my life, I realize that all my recognition and wealth that I have is meaningless in the face of imminent death. You can hire someone to drive a car for you. You can hire someone to make money for you. But I cannot rent someone to carry this disease for me. One can find material things, but there is one thing that cannot be found when it is lost, and that is life. Now, I say that to you because many of you have seen me many times with our posts doing Hustle Redefined and talking about how it's more than just work. Yes, work matters. Guys, finances matter. You're happier when you could pay your bills. But it's more than that, right? I've said a million times, like, if you're gonna be willing to hustle to go make that money and work all the time, then you better be willing, in my case, to jump on that red eye and drive to a game at 8 a.m. as soon as you land so that your kids see you there. It's about all of it. That's what I'm trying to get across to you guys. And for some of you, by the way, you're watching this, and it's not even about what you do that everyone sees. For some of you, your greatest contribution to this world will literally have nothing to do with what you individually do that everyone sees, and everything to do with who you raise. Who's the bigger hero? The person you had up on your wall, the person you emulate, or the person who raised them? That's a real question. Who's the bigger hero? We know who has more fanfare. Who's the bigger hero? So I'm asking you guys very simply, join me on this journey online to help you stay committed. We said many times, go to connectwithjared.com, connect on those places. Join me in that journey, stay engaged. Join me in my quest to help you through our coaching and our training and our marketing and our transaction coordination and our CRM. I mean, literally, guys, I have dedicated my life to seeing you succeed. Let me fulfill my calling by helping you get yours. That's really what I do. Don't just read your notes from this conference. We've mentioned it many times. Execute on them. Have a plan. Remember that you were created to fulfill that potential, but you also have to believe that you deserve it. It's not enough to act on it if you're going to pull back every time something good is going to happen. You need to ask yourself what you're committed to doing as a result of what you learned. What are you committed to signing up for that you need that you don't have right now? Do you need to switch coaches? Do you need to, what do you need to do differently? What strategies will you implement to gain more listings? What content will you create and how often? What tools and services do you need that you don't currently have? What excuses do you need to stop making? I want you to remember one thing is that for all of you, I'm in your corner at all times. God bless you all. I will see you all online. And hopefully, I will see you at a live event, and especially our event, the 2021 Jared James Advance in Nashville on October 18th and 19th. Make sure you guys take everything you need from this conference. Take advantage of the vendors you need. Watch everything over and over as many times as you need. Thank you guys. God bless you. I'll see you soon.